Hey, it's Mike from brew-juice.com. So tonight I've got a product review, sort of product demo, and it's a brand new faucet. It's actually the faucet from NUKATAP. So several months ago, the fine folks at Kegland in Australia reached out to us and said, hey, would you like to try our recently released NUKATAPs? They feel that they're the best forward sealing faucets on the market. So I could have shown you the faucet then, but I wanted to put it on my kegerator and use it for several months, get a sense of how it worked and figure out, do I like it more or less than my standard faucets? So what I want to do tonight is I'm going to show you the inner workings of a NUKATAP versus a standard faucet and give you the pros and cons and give you an idea of what makes a forward sealing faucet forward sealing versus a rear sealing faucet, how those two things work and how they differ. But the first thing, most important, I want to show you about these faucets is that I've had these two faucets on here for, well, these faucets have been on here for a long time, but I haven't used these two faucets in about 2 weeks. I know it's a shame, but I haven't been drawing beer off these faucets. And what normally happens is these faucets, a standard faucet, can sort of bind up with beer residue inside. But what I have found over time is that the NUKATAP faucet, all you got to do is come up and give it a little pull, and it starts to flow. And it's great. It doesn't stick, it hardly sticks at all. And so it flows beautifully right off the get-go. A standard faucet, which is a rear sealing faucet, sometimes you have to really pull on it to get it to pop open, just like that. I have to use a lot more strength to get that one to flow. Because there's a bunch of gummy residue that gets in and kind of holds it up. So what I want to do next is I'm going to take these two faucets off, I'll take them apart and give you a close-up look at what makes each faucet what it is. Okay everybody, I've removed the standard faucet and the NUKATAP faucet from the kegerator, and I've taken them apart to their basic parts so you can see the layout of the faucets here. So let's first talk about the standard rear sealing faucet. Okay, so both faucets have just a retaining nut. Then this is the action lever, and they both have the same sort of rounded, balled over type mechanism here. And then the real difference is what's inside the faucet that controls whether the beer comes out or not. In the standard faucet, you have this sort of rod feature with this round ball here. And what happens here in the faucet, so here's the faucet, it's got a round back here, and this ball, which has an O-ring on the inside of it. So this slides inside the faucet. You want to have that facing up. That goes into here until it aligns up with the top hole there. And then this device, this lever, this part of the lever here goes in and catches that notch inside the, and then what you can see here, sorry I keep coming off camera, when I pull the faucet forward, this ball is shooting towards the back of the faucet, so the beer where it's attached to the shank on the faucet wall is sitting right behind here, and it can go through because now that O-ring is not pressed up against the rear wall here of this. And when you push the faucet back to stop the flow, the O-ring reaches, makes connection back here in this part of the faucet, stopping flow. And then that's why this is called a rear sealing faucet. And one of the real struggles that this creates is that any beer that's still in here and drips out, there's always beer residue sitting in most of the action area, especially up in here where the little lever action is, and it gets sticky. As the beer dries, it gets more and more sticky, and so the faucet can sometimes get stuck in that position, and when you have to really crank down on it sometimes to break it free and to get the beer flow. And also there's more beer hanging around here, so the flow can get erratic, you get more foam, and also with beer sitting around in here more, with more area of old beer, you've got a higher degree of potential for contamination of bacteria, whatever, getting in there and just making the next pour not so great, or it's going to get flushed out into your actual beer glass, which is never good. So Now let's look at how the NUKATAP works. So the NUKATAP has a much bigger open throat in the back here. Trying to see if I can get the light on there. And then instead of that long mechanism, it has this smaller mechanism with a very similar notch in it. And it actually looks sort of like, I don't know, some sort of little atom bomb thing. It's, you know, it's kind of, this is just how they designed it. I don't know if that's why they call it NUKATAP or not. But this part here, which has got a slight dimpled nose on it, right? This part here, if it's not coming out in the videos, I'll take some closer up photos of these parts. But this slides into here now, just like the last one did. Come on, get in there. And this whole thing is slightly, you know, has like a little bit of a rubberized feel to it. And so then I slide this in and again, engage it with the lever. And now, when I have the faucet in the rear position, that little black thing in there that looks sort of like a bomb pushes forward to seal the faucet. Versus when I want to have beer come out and I pull the faucet forward, now the beer flows through, goes past the side of the widget in here and comes out. And it's sealing up in here versus on this faucet, it's sealing back here. So you've got all of this space that's still filled with clean beer, and it's just this part of the faucet that has beer in it, but this part of the faucet doesn't interact with the mechanism for opening and closing. So even if it does get a little bit gummy and a little bit gross in here, it's not really able to stick up the plunger mechanism inside there, and it almost always flows free no matter how long the tap is sat. And so over the several months that I've had this installed, when I go to pour beer from this tap, no matter how long it's stalled, I pull it and it just flows, where these ones sometimes can get really tightly jammed up when you pull them forward. So the other thing, the last thing that I want to show you, which is really cool with these NUKATAP faucets, is that the nozzle, which is very similar to some of the other faucets on the market that are forward sealing like this, is that you can unscrew this nozzle, right? Which in the one that they sent me is just a straight bore, plain faucet. It's got a little bit of a tapered edge to it for looks or whatever. But it goes in there, there's a little O-ring in there. But the cool thing about this, you can actually change these out, and they have some that actually have a fritted barrier in there with just a few small holes. So for a stout faucet, so if you were pushing with nitrogen, you wouldn't have to buy a whole new faucet to do a nitro pour. You can still use the NUKATAP and just change this out for a nice nitrogenated beer, like a dry Irish stout type of pour, using the same faucet, and you wouldn't even have to take the faucet off of the kegerator. You would just change this, and you can change this without even having to disconnect the beer line. Beer's not going to flow as long as the handle's in the right place when you take the faucet off. And they also have some other attachments for this. Excuse me. When I want to fill a growler, I have this device, which is just about an 18-inch piece of tubing, and this cool little stainless steel barbed fitting with some O-rings on it that sort of looks like a ball valve post, but this actually slips inside here. So on these types of taps, when I want to fill a growler or fill a bottle, I use this just to be able to fill directly to the bottom of the bottle, whatever vessel I'm trying to fill. They also have these types of things for this. I just don't have one. So they have one of these that's got a barred fitting and you can put a tubing on it. So, so that functionality exists here too. So they have different tips for different types of things. I believe they also make flow control versions of these now, although I haven't looked into that yet. But I haven't had any problem. If you go back and look at some of our balancing your CO2 draft system, having a flow control faucet probably isn't all that necessary. But so those are the inner workings of what makes a forward seal faucet a forward seal and what makes a rear sealing faucet a rear sealing faucet. Well, so there you have it. So you got to see the inner pieces of a standard faucet and the NUKATAP faucet, and hopefully now you've got a better understanding of what a forward seal versus a rear sealing faucet, how it really works, and what the differences are. So I guess the final verdict is, as a product review, do I like the NUKATAP versus a standard faucet? And I'll tell you, I've been thoroughly impressed, and I absolutely love it. I think the flow is smoother as it comes out. Like I said, it doesn't stick as much. When I have taken these faucets off every so many kegs sort of to clean them, the inside of this faucet is always much cleaner than the inside of this faucet. There just seems to be less stuff in there to bind up and get stuff in there. Maybe it has to do with the fact that there's less growth because there's less residue up inside there when it's sealed. So yeah, I would absolutely recommend NUKATAP, and if anything, just so you can change out those nozzles and do the stout faucet like I mentioned in the other part of the video. So big thanks to the folks at Kegland for sending us the faucet. I just wish they had sent me 3 more. So if you like this video, give us a thumbs up. If you like what we're doing and making these videos, please subscribe to the channel. And as always, cheers.